martial arts, karate. I bust you down like Itachi, cause we legit and Hachi. Straight kamikaze, I'm talking to bodies as I go straight brawly. Y'all niggas can hardly be me, I'm not part of the sea. I'm part of the sea like Moses. No psychosis, the hocus pocus. I put importance to stay focused. Ignore all the BS on my timeline. I throw a lifeline for those thinking I ain't about mine. Hit you upside your head with a tie iron. Can't be your time if it's my time. The set to be patient, I'm patiently waiting. It's driving me crazy, cause lately the odds that I'm facing is basic and basically tragically hating. Anticipating my fall, they want it all for themselves. So I make the call, no need to stall. I go and get them all off of the shelf. I take affirmative action, I'm blasting and laughing of how you reacting to my satisfaction of cashing injections and Benjis and Wilsons, the life that you always imagined. Brother from the goal, yeah. If you ever see him go, it's Holocaust or Holy Ghost, overcome or overflow. Yeah, either way it's overdose. Watch you walk or comatose, penetrating to your soul. Yeah, tit for tat and toe for toe, pound for pound and blow for blow. You would never see me fold. Claiming that what you don't know, that is how you get exposed. Left it there with bullet holes. Promise to leave it alone. Promises all day.
All right. Y'all probably wondering, like, why the hell is Vega up so late to talk about this? Well, to be honest with you, I'm just working with the hours I have. I'm actually used to being up late now with my new work schedule. So this is my usual time of being up. But I just wanted to share my thoughts surrounding Black Adam. I just seen it today. I just wanted to share my thoughts while it's still fresh in my head. I had some time to brew it, in my mind, think about it. But if you've read the description, I also want to talk about like everything surrounding the movie, not just the movie itself, but everything surrounding it, the movie, and kind of just how it all fits in, right? As far as the movie's concerned, though, what I will say is if it isn't clear by now, is that there will always be these weird articles and hit pieces that come out to dissuade you from seeing a DC movie. Let's just keep that a buck. Like, for whatever reason, Marvel will always get a pass, and all these Disney properties will always get a pass. Somehow the critics love it, whatever. Or if there's anybody who's associated with Disney that is working with Warner Brothers DC, they get a pass and they get this like pat on the back and overall praise. And it couldn't be more clear that that's what happened with all these articles coming out. If you were seeing all these bad reviews, these weird Rotten Tomato scores, Rotten Tomato itself, not the audience score, that shouldn't surprise you. And if you're still a person who goes off of a Rotten Tomato score, I pity the fool, because you shouldn't be going off of that Rotten Tomato score. Those guys don't know what a good movie is if their life depended on it. If you are going to go by anything, go by the audience score. But honestly, even that I don't do. If you're somebody who likes to make their own opinions about anything, just go watch a movie for yourself. Who cares what anybody else has to say, whether a critic or whether a person, just go watch it for yourself. That's that. But all that to be said, not that you shouldn't hear what anybody has to say, but let be guided by your own thoughts, your own framework. If it does help to hear what somebody else is saying, cool. Why not? Hey, it's your right to know what you're going to spend your money on, I guess. But if you're just a person who loves movies, loves art, or maybe just loves DC, then I would say go watch the movie for yourself. All that to be said, I'm not just saying what I'm saying because what these articles are saying is the norm, or like it's, because it is. But I'm not just saying that to say that that's why you shouldn't listen to what they say, or to what they're saying. What I'm going to say is that, or what I'm saying is that watching the movie myself, I can confirm to you that a lot of what they're saying isn't true. And let me tell you, if it was true, I'd let you know. I'd keep it a buck with you. As much as I love DC, I will hold them accountable to what should be done in a movie. Now, that being said, is Black Adam a perfect movie? No, it's not. Do I have my own issues with it? Yes, I do. Um, but is it a bad movie? Far from it. I actually enjoyed the movie um, for what it was, or for what it is, what it's introducing. Um, and I would say the good for sure outweighs what I my pet peeves with the movie, I guess you could say, or my critique of it. That is probably negative, but overall positive. I want to say um, it was nonstop action. If that's what you're into, uh, so you'd enjoy that if that's what you're into in a movie. Um, it actually has some pretty good humor in it. If you're into movies that have humor. Um, Now, are all the critiques that are out there wrong? I can see why there are certain critiques out there. Um, are they as do they mean anything at the end of the day? No, not really. Um, because in the end of the day, you can always say something is imitating something else or close to that uh, frame of thought, um, in which, yeah, there are certain scenes like, that people pointed out that I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see why that mimics that or this mimics that, or, it's not even mimics, but like it mirrors that same direction, I guess you could say. Um, Now, what I will say is in my personal opinion, I wish that the studio would, or what, you know, I don't know, studio or not. I just wish it would have been that they would have actually gone R rated with it. And I say that because you can see that it should have been R rated. We know why they didn't, right? It's about allowing the audience of children to be able to come see the movie so they can make that kind of money as well on the movie. I hope down the line there's this like director's cut that's a rated R version of this film to really see what they had in mind for this character. Um, Not to say that what people are probably expecting out of a Black Adam movie is what you're fully gonna get here. And again, this is where I'm gonna say like I do have certain things I will say I don't agree with that I wouldn't have done if I was, I guess, the director or the screenwriter or whatever, whoever puts these stories together. But regardless of that, I can't say that it's a bad film in as a whole. And it was a really good film actually. For what you get in the amount of time you get it in, you can you can follow through. And my concern of finding a lack of connectivity um to other films or other characters into which he relates to, that I wasn't sure they were going to play at it. They found it actually does make sense. I will say that his his existence and how he came to be, whatever, like the way they make it happen, it all makes sense in the film. It does. It's that concern. If you were concerned with that as well as I was, they do address it pretty well in the film. So it's not like it's a film that's completely out of whack with nothing that connects, and that's not true. Um, what I will say is like if you're heavy into the Black Adam lore, or let's just keep it 100, Shazam lore, and you're heavy as a comic book fan of these characters, then yeah, you might be disappointed because for whatever reason, you're not really there's no mention of Shazam in the film, really. And so like obviously you don't see him in the trailer, you don't see him in the like you do, but you don't, and maybe they purposely did it that way. But in my opinion, it's okay. It doesn't ruin the film, is what I'm trying to get at. If for me personally, the story they give you actually overall makes sense. Um, but if you again, I'm only saying this because I want you to go in there knowing like, hey, this might not be what you see in the comics or what you see in the cartoons or the animated series. Whether it was the cartoon series or the movies, the animated movies, it's not what you get there. And there's a few things apart from that that are not comic book accurate or animated series accurate. Um, I'm trying to speak in a manner that's not going to spoil things for you guys. I kind of feel like maybe that Shazam thing kind of did, but I don't think anybody was had the idea of seeing Shazam, and probably for the majority of people who are DC EU fans or the cinematic universe of DC, you probably I don't know how your thoughts are when it comes around the Shazam movie. I know for a lot of people it was hit or miss. Um, but that's a whole different discussion. I'm not trying to rant too much on that. To stay focused on this Black Adam movie. Um, yes, if you're a comic book fan and you're expecting something that's accurate to the comics, I will say this isn't it, but it's not bad either. Um, it's there's actually a twist, and there's a twist to the story that uh, in my opinion was actually a really good twist. Um, so this is what I mean. Like there are some positive things about this movie. Um, and I think they outweigh like the things that I'm mentioning as far as like the inaccuracy to comics or um what have you, the animated series. That might disappoint you for sure if you are a fan of like these characters and their origins and even the source material of it all, like you know how these characters function and their abilities and um the capabilities of their weapons and things of that nature. If you're very knowledgeable about those things and you are looking forward to seeing that displayed, you're not going to see that, is for sure. But not to say that what you get is a complete waste either. I will say, like, as far as the characters that we get in this film, if you know them, there's still something to be happy about, I guess, or satisfied with to a degree. To a degree. Again, I'm trying to keep it a buck because I don't want to oversell the movie, but I'm not trying to undersell it either because it's not a movie that's not worth going to watch. Honestly, it is still a movie that is worth watching, but I just got to keep it a buck and say that there are things that personally might be missing, in my opinion. Um, this is coming from somebody who obviously is a DC fan, so maybe that's why. What I will say is that I watched it with someone who's not necessarily a DC fan and they love the film. So like if you're going in there like not really you're not a DC fan, none of this really pertains to you. You're just trying to watch a movie that you can go and enjoy. This is definitely it. This movie you can definitely go watch and enjoy. Especially because again they brought it down to a PG-13, I believe, and so it's palatable even to children, family friendly, I guess to a certain extent, and almost like Shazam, where like there's excuse me, there's borderline things that maybe might be scary for children, maybe. Um, but overall, my bad, my neck is killing me. Hey, that's the person that went to go see it with me in the movie. What's going on, babe? Um, um, yeah. So whole point is if you're just gonna see if you're just going in there to see a movie that you can enjoy, this is it. You can enjoy this movie just as your average movie goer. But if you're like a diehard DC fan, you might find things disappointed about this. Or if you're, let's say, cinephile who are you're into watching movies and details matter to you, um, some things might not hit, some things will. What I will say is for a movie that has a lot of characters, um, you not necessarily a lot of characters, because let's break it down like this, without to give relevance to what I'm saying, right? For instance, the first Suicide Squad, right? It was a team that you're introduced to, and they give you like a quick profile. It's something similar to that. You get like a quick profile, brief history, while Amanda Waller's talking about the character. It was literally almost the same, um, treated in the same manner. The Suicide Squad does an even poorer job of it. James Gunn's version, or his movie, where and then probably more so because there was a lot more characters he was trying to throw at you. Um, but so like in this movie, obviously you got Hawkman, Doctor Fate, Cyclone, and Anna Smasher, along with Black Adam and the villain. I can't even, his name's eluding me right now for whatever reason. Sadak, I don't know, whatever, Shabak, whatever it was. You got a lot of characters that are definitely more than one. You would think you have time to kind of elaborate on these characters, what they are. Not necessarily saying that you have to focus on them for like a whole long time, but like I would have preferred uh more depth giving into their who they are, so that certain elements and things that are happening allow you to be more connected to the characters. And that's just the way I personally prefer watching a movie when it comes to these kinds of films. Um, so I would say that it doesn't necessarily give enough time for the character development or knowledge of the characters and who they are. And I only say that because uh, who I was with was asking certain questions on who's this, who's that, And so clearly that's so like even if you're a general audience and you don't know these characters, it's a poor job of trying to introduce characters to people who don't know who these characters are. And then for someone who does know who these characters are, you're still trying to see how they fit in this universe and kind of like why they're trying to say this without spoiling anything, why their base level of power is where it's at, right? Um, type of ordeal, or why they're how do you say uh, their superhero IQ, so to speak, why that's where it's at. So you kind of have to like piece it together yourself because of the brief introductions you have to these characters, um, which is fine. Like in essence of like it again. I don't think this doesn't break the movie, but again, if I'm gonna take points away, this is where I'm taking points away. But again, not saying that this is what makes the movie not worth watching. Again, the movie is definitely worth watching. Apart from that factor, though, the way these characters intermingle in the film, definitely enjoyable. Each character has its own identity and character of how they behave and who they are. But like for sure, the characters that steal the show on that end, and probably more so because they are, and even in the comics, I would say, uh, they are the more notable characters, right? So, between Black Adam, Hawkman, and Doctor Fate, these three characters are definitely the main back and forth characters that really have something to offer in this movie. Um, Cyclone is there, and I'm not so sure why, to be honest. Not to be mean, and I hate to say that because it's like, you know, she's like technically the only, I guess, female hero in the film, um, so to speak, with superpowers. But like, truly, her placement there was kind of like, I don't know, like I'm not so sure I understood why she was there. And then you know, it was almost like they were between her and Adam Smasher. They were there just to learn, observe, and grow, and given a chance to be part of something. But like, really and truly, Adam Smasher actually has more relevance. You see him more relevant to what's happening in the film. Cyclone, not so much. Um, it's like they just added her just to have her there, almost like. And I hate to say this, but it was like almost like we're just have you there for representation rather than like actually being necessary for the story. Um, for like I guess to even dive deep into the story, like the mission, what the mission was. That's how I feel personally. Like, again, I would say this is something go watch for yourself, and either you agree with me or not. Um, but that's just personally how I feel about her character in the movie. Adam Smasher again. He has more noticeable moments than her, in my opinion. Um, and I can see more actually growth with that character more than anything. I could see him being used more in the future, than anything. Again, with the Cyclone character, I'm not sold on her just yet. I you know, and I could have probably done without her, to be honest. Um, because like even the way they display her powers in the movie, I wasn't so amazed by. It almost seemed again like I don't again like if I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know what use her powers served in this movie. To be honest, uh, um, it is what it is. But that's that. Moving forward, though, back to Hawkman and let's just say Doctor Fate and Black Adam. These characters are definitely the ones shining out. The movie Black Adam has to shine. It's his movie. But as far as like the co-stars, like or the I guess you could say the other characters that are parallel as far as notability goes. Hawkman, uh, is it Eldest Hodge? I forget. I can't. His name eludes me. That he plays him well. Bronson plays Doctor Fate well. Uh, I would. I want to see. I don't want to. I would want to see what these characters would be like in a fully no restraints of movie ratings. I want to see how more I just it could have been more badass in my opinion seeing these characters do what they can do if this movie was probably like rated R or something, you know. Um and just yeah, but I will say seeing Hawkman displayed his power level to Black At like it was great. Again, if you are looking for a comic book accurate depiction of these characters, this isn't the film. I'm just gonna keep it a buck. It's not. Um, and sadly said, I can only say that because once again, we don't get much background on these characters. We really don't even know how Hawkman is in this world. We don't know how Doctor Fate is in this world, and I think that's what bothers me about it. Is just like man, like these guys just exist just to exist right now, in this universe. And I feel like when you're talking about characters of that type of notability on their power level or their scale, they deserve more than what was given. They're not, and I hate to say it this way, they're not just like members of a Suicide Squad that are, lack for a better words, expendable. Um, not to say that like Harley Quinn isn't a notable character, or Deadshot, or what have you. That's not what I'm trying to get at. What I'm saying is like those characters, like there's not much to say. You can easily, we know Deadshot's a mercenary. We know Harley Quinn is and they actually give us. I'll tell you this much: David Ayer Suicide Squad gives you more background on the notable characters than this movie did with these notable characters. So that, in a sense, kind of like that movie saved itself on that end, right? Even when it came to Deadshot, right? Like you get like a really extensive background on who he is, like the main characters, right? And actually almost every character, minus the ones that kind of like don't matter, you know. Or not don't matter, but again, they're humans for the most part with gadgets or mentalities or genius, some sort of psycho genius as to why they're there. The only one that had like some sort of superpower in the Suicide Squad was Diablo, right? And then Katana with her sword, which probably could have had more background to it. But to relate it to this movie, when I'm talking about like lack of background, and especially when you know who these characters are, you want to see how they fit in this world. We're talking about Hawkman, right? If it's the Hawkman from the comics, he's the Thanagarian, and you want to know how Thanagarian is here on Earth and why he hasn't been discussed. You want to know why the Lord of Order, Dr. Fate, where has he been, and how has he been a part of all this? And they kind of allude to this Justice Society being around for a minute. You kind of want to know why and how and where they all fit, and you kind of don't get that. You really don't get that as much as you probably should. Um, but nonetheless, it again, this isn't something that truly takes away from how good the movie is. But in my personal opinion, for someone who needs details, who appreciates the details of that manner, for me, it takes away from my full enjoyment of the film as just somebody who the details matter to him. I know for a fact when I say these things, this doesn't matter to everyone. So I'm probably not the average moviegoer, but for me, it does. And if you're like me in that arena, again, I'm just letting you know these are things that might, pick at you, but this doesn't take away from how good the film is as a whole. Um, you again, I really wish, I want to know, I really want to see the director's version of this. I'm sure there's got to be like an extended cut of this, a more rated R version of this that exists that really probably would have given us a more clear vision of what they wanted to do with these characters. But probably due to studio restrictions, probably mainly old regime than anything, knowing their formula of keeping films at a 2 hour, minimum, or maybe even just the Garcias themselves. Maybe I don't know, thinking, hey, the wiser move here is keep it PG-13. Keep, what I'm saying, there's some weird notion that films have to be like a certain way to have a success in the box office. I'm not so sure that actually holds, but whatever. Uh, and I only say that because now to allude to talk about certain things that I feel I'm not so sure The Rock knows what he's saying when he's saying these things. Now, granted, there's a lot of things he's been saying that I'm like, two thumbs up. I'm glad you're saying these things. Yes, old regime didn't listen to fans. Um, and what kind of business model is that for a company that wants to be successful? I have no idea. You're talking about fans that pay money to see your movies, buy your merchandise, that are invested into your franchise. The last thing you want to do is not listen to your fans. Um, so to hear them say things like that, like it's like, all right, two thumbs up. But at the same notion, I'm like, um, you know, how do I say this? we want to see, you're okay. Let's just put it like this, to not beat around the bush, right? You say you want to bring in a new era of DC, and now, like, as I meditate on these things that are being said, I can understand why this is actually a problem, you know, and that's that I think a lot of fans don't really necessarily need a new DC, so to speak. Um, New management probably for sure is what we needed, right? In the sense of like we need new leaders in that team of Warner Brothers, DC movies, properties, and things of that nature that are actually going to greenlight films that are going to do well and stop trying to micromanage the vision of the directors that are coming on board to make these DC films, right? That being said, though, I'm not so sure we needed a necessarily a new DC uh, or a new era. We want to see, we wanted to pick up, I think, from where it left off, right? And I think that's where the main issue lies, where people actually are having a problem with what's being said, um, and what this movie might stand for when it comes to what they want. In essence, of like where Man of Steel, the foundation Man of Steel lays, it's Superman's universe. But see, he did say something recently that I'm like, okay, that means something, right? This universe can't exist without Superman, but then acknowledge, can you at least acknowledge that he already has a universe? And I think that's also an issue. Is it's like you're saying the right things, but then you're not saying the full, complete right things. And it's like there is a Superman universe that exists already, you know, and your job should have been to adapt your film into that universe, right? And now, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that that didn't happen, but with that being said, I feel like you should have treated this with more, um, not treated it with more, like, because look, I'm not gonna lie, this guy was clearly passionate about it. They were all passionate about it. Clearly, he said they were fighting the old regime for 15 years. We know how that goes. You're fighting then you're fighting to have Henry Cavill for 6 years. So clearly, we know you have the right mindset. Again, I'm not so sure maybe you just don't know what he's saying. I don't know if he knows completely what he's saying, maybe. And again, I just have to be honest about how I'm perceiving these things. Um, but the whole point is there was a universe with Superman already in it. Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Suicide Squad. I'm not even going to include Wonder Woman because there's no mention of Superman in that film. I'm only going to only mention films that mention Superman, right? Or at least the Henry Cavill Superman, right? And then there's Zack Snyder's Justice League, right? So all that to say is that there is a universe that already exists with Henry Cavill Superman, and your team's job is to integrate your characters into that world. So the very least you could do is do a damn good job of making it happen, where you can integrate these characters into that world, you know. Um, and so that goes back to my thing of lack of background on these characters you're introducing. So like again, my issue is not that you're introducing new characters. My issue is take the time to introduce these new characters and make sure you have it make sense to why they exist in this universe, you know. um but there are certain things that are in this film that lets you see that it is connected to the universe, to this DCE universe that's already been for since Man of Steel, right? Um, and unfortunately, for some people who aren't uh, in full, I guess, agreement with um, certain movies that have come out in the DCE universe, like the Suicide Squad, which I'll admit, um, you know, I've said it before when it came out, is that if that movie had existed on its own without David Ayer's Suicide Squad existing already, it would have been fine because it was a comedy, and it was like a parody on who they, like, the whole idea of a suicide. So it was in its own way what it was, but because there is a film with continuity that exists in a certain cinematic universe, what was given in that film kind of undermines it, you know, and or really undermines it, and that's my issue, right? So now here we are with Black Adam, though, and I'm just trying to all that to say that I know people are gonna say, um, you know, these characters, certain characters that are show up in this movie to kind of give it that connective tissue, that there are in other films that exist that aren't part of the Snyderverse, or um, you know, that's really hard to sell in the end of the day, simply because I don't think anyone really knows what characters were intended to be in the Snyderverse. You know, and even when you talk about what Zack Snyder said himself, it's like it's not like he was trying to hold this thing to himself. You know, his thing was that he was just trying to lay the groundwork of a universe that if people wanted to build on it, they could. And they clearly had, unfortunately, before us seeing the complete blueprint or foundation of whatever he was trying to set for this DC cinematic universe or extended universe, whatever you want to call it. Um, so, you know, all that being said, though, this movie does take place in this universe. I just wish they would have done a better job of integrating it into this universe, as far as like, where has Hawkman been? Where has the Justice Society been? You know, that's just my personal thing. I just feel like it could have used more to do that, you know. But does that mean, like, again, does that it takes away from how great these characters are in the film? Um and the overall story arc in this film? No, not necessarily. Um because like, again, as now the film as a standalone film is still a good film. But if you are trying to, if the idea is that you're really trying to integrate it into the universe that already is, you could have done a better job at that. But if that's not the intention, then I can see then the scare of when you're saying there's a new DC or new era, why it's gonna sit wrong with certain people, because not everybody's trying to see something. We're not trying to move on from the Justice League. We want more Justice League. You know, and we want, I think we all want Dark Side, right? We all want to see what ended in Zack Snyder's Justice League. We want more of that. We want to see characters that were, you know, supposed to come, like Deathstroke. You know, we want to see the true iteration of Jared Leto's Joker. You know, so there are certain things that we still, as DC fans, want to see, and I think it's something that should be confirmed before, like, moving forward. You know, fast forward, right? But so here we are, Black Adam, and it does exist in this universe. I just hope that they do a better job going forward integrating it into this universe. That's just my personal opinion. Um, but again, does it, by the average movie standard, is this gonna break the film? No, not necessarily. You know, there's plenty of movies out there that have plenty of potholes, that are in its own right entertaining. They're good. They have something good to offer. It's still a pretty good story. You know, um, they're humorous. It has something to offer. But like if you're again a person of detail that and meticulous about what you want in your movies, um, then I can see why you probably will have issues with this movie per se. Um, this is my opinion though, because I'm that type of person, but I might be wrong. So in the end of the day, I will say go check out the movie for yourself. Who cares what these articles are saying? Who cares what I'm saying? Technically, I guess, right? but but again, I just want to encourage you to still see it because regardless of these little things little things, maybe big things, these things that I'm mentioning, the movie was still good. I enjoyed it. A lot of things I laughed at. There's a certain humor that exists in that movie that makes sense because of how Black Adam is introduced and where he's coming from. Um, I will say when Rock says that he's an anti-hero, he is leaning into that heavy. The story around it leans into that heavy. This he he isn't a villain necessarily in this movie at all. Which again, if you're a Black Adam or Shazam fan, and you know that Black Adam is technically a villain, then that might push a button for you. Um, he definitely isn't necessarily a villain. Um, you know, because like I explained to someone else, who was asking me personally what I thought about the movie, you know, uh, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but Black Adam is always more a villain than he is an anti-hero. He is, but he is not a villain in the essence of he's out there to just wreak chaos into the world. He is a villain in the nature of like Magneto, where you can see why he's a villain. There's a reason to why he's a villain, and there's a means to an end that he's trying to meet. He's that type of villain, you know, where occasionally he'll have to team up with the good guys because it benefits him to do so. That's really the true nature of Black Adam, where you will see some sort of like anti-hero aspect to him, or he has the people that he cares for, his people, his city, what I'm saying, again, relevant to or relatable to like Magneto, right? Magneto is a villain, but he has compassion for mutants, right? That's Black Adam, right? He is a villain, but he has compassion towards conduct, and the people of conduct, the people he technically oversees and rules over, whatever. Um, so that's not necessarily again. This isn't the villain you know Black Adam to be if that's what you're expecting. He is more definitely of an anti-hero or projected to be more of an anti-hero in this film. But we know that, right? Like The Rock has been promoting that. So but I will say like when you see the film you'll understand why, right? So the story plays to that. So it's not far-fetched. So all these things are happening, or him being an anti-hero makes sense to the story that is given. I will say that. So it's not like it doesn't make sense. No, it does make sense. A lot of things actually make sense in this film. And again, the negativities that I'm mentioning, I think are just it's more towards people who are either like hardcore DC fans and hardcore cinematic, or like cinephiles, or that love the details of a movie, that you enjoyed even longer movies that give time to push out a story. If that's what you're looking for, then this might disappoint in that arena. But this isn't a bad film at all. It is definitely one of the better DC films out there. Um, will I dare say it's on? Would I dare say it's Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, or Zack Snyder's Justice League? No, I won't. I won't say that. There's those movies for me, especially like Man of Steel and BVS, they're flawless. Especially BVS. Um, what is it, the unlimited cut or whatever it's called? Yeah, I think it's the unlimited cut. So if you're fans of that and this is what you're expecting, like, don't expect that. This isn't that. This in its own way is its own type of movie. Um, and but it's still a good movie. Um, it really is. It's really action packed. The fighting, as much as people are saying like, oh, like it has no originality because it kind of mirrors other portrayals of other things in other movies. That might be true to a degree for sure, but like I think that's actually necessary when it comes to telling this story because it allows you to be able to equate excuse me, it allows you to be able to equate or compare Black Adam's power level or the extent of his powers, as well as even like Hawkman. Um, I can't say Doctor Fate necessarily because I don't. Truth be told, there's nobody so far in the DC extended universe that exists that I can remember or think of that has powers relative to Doctor Strange. What am I saying? To Doctor Fate. So that's kind of hard to. There's nothing really to relate him or compare him to necessarily. Um, Other than I guess maybe Enchantress. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. I can't think of anybody. But again, as far as Black Adam's power level, Hawkman's power level, like the things you're seeing in this film allow you to compare because you see, oh, similar feats, similar movements, as far as like indicating strength, super strength, or super speed, hyper speed for that matter, what have you, you know, um, even materials of of certain nature. Again, it's not accurate to the comics. I will say that, but like again, scaling to like uh let's just say Kryptonian technology, apocalyptic technology, things like again, there are things in this film that allow you to compare and visually see like how uh it exists and works in this universe, right? And what have you. So again, that doesn't bother me none because as the viewer who's looking to see how this movie fits into the DC extended universe or DC cinematic universe, or if for what we really want, the Snyderverse, right? Like how it's going to actually be able to be incorporated. It actually makes sense, um, allowing you to see the scaling of power, the power levels, whatever. Um, I'm trying to think. So yeah, I will say like that's that. If I were to rate it, um, I'm gonna give this I'm gonna give this a solid 8. A solid 8. Um, yeah, I have to give it a solid 8. Um, and then the post credit scene. What I will say to that, for anybody who doesn't know like what's gonna happen in that post credit scene, maybe this is where you don't listen. You know, but for anybody who kind of already had this spoiled for you online and you kind of already and low key kind of The Rock, for whatever reason, ranted about it in his interviews. Well, he was asked in a way, so he was kind of weirdly put in a corner, I guess. But you know the Superman cameo that everybody was freaking out about online. I'm gonna say this like straight up is that honestly, it's almost like people are color grading it themselves on how they're projecting it online, and or even like the cameras that are being used do it no justice. Because it doesn't look as bad as it looks in these like weird you know, unfortunate, spoiled people that are just, for whatever reason, deciding to spoil the movie. You know, people are what they are. They're gonna do what they do. It's not. I definitely don't applaud it. I don't stand by it. I wish people had more integrity in that area of just like, hey, let people enjoy this film for what it is. Whether or not you want to enjoy it or not, that's on you. If you went and saw this movie and you didn't like it, that's on you. That's your opinion. You're free to have it. Don't you don't have to go out of your way to ruin this movie for anybody else who is looking to enjoy it. So I will say I don't like that personally, that behavior. But hey, people are what they are. They do what they do, and I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I'm nobody to just tell you really not to do it, but I just, all I can say is I don't agree with it. Um, but that being said, when it comes to that Superman post credit scene, um, in my opinion, even that scene alone, that scene itself can also be so far ahead in the timeline of the actual movie. The timeline of the actual movie in itself can be so far ahead of what we already have so far before this movie in the DC universe or DC extended universe, or even for that matter, let's just say, like, if you're just focused on the Snyderverse, even in the events of Zack Snyder's Justice League, what happens in this movie can be so far ahead, really could. Um, but for sure, that post credit scene, what I will say, even though, and I could, share your thoughts with me if you agree or disagree if you've seen this, but like, even the way Henry Cavill looks, he looks like an older, more mature Superman. In which, if you know what Zack Snyder had intended for Superman, he intended for Superman to be brought back to that point. So for me personally, this movie could be either past uh the coming of Darkseid, or somewhere between, if there's if it's still going to be, if the Justice League is still going to be a three-part story arc movie, right? In which we know we're supposed to now still get a part two and a part three. This movie can technically exist after part two, technically. Um, which would make more, which again makes all the sense to why we do have Superman in that, in his blue and red suit and not the black suit. And even just the way he looks is more, it just looks like a more further, more mature, down the line Superman, um to me. But like, that that's coming, because even in like Zack Snyder's Justice League, the way you see Superman portrayed once he's, I guess, brought back, or once he's resurrected, um just the way he behaves is different from what we got in Man of Steel and BVS. um so it doesn't really take away from that. So yeah, this is the Henry Cavill Superman of this universe, and that's what I'm trying to say. Like, like, all that to say that when I say that I wish they did a better job in integrating this film, I still mean that, but it doesn't not integrate with what we've gotten in the past with these characters, as far as like Amanda Waller, Henry Cavill, Superman, um, which for sure are the direct pieces that have it. Those are the connective tissues that have it connect. Um, you know, I'm trying to think. Like, I hope I didn't spoil it with the Man of Water, but I want to say she's in the trailer, whatever. So, um, those are like the main connective tissues for sure. Everything else is kind of um, foggy and gray, minus again the correlation of, if you know, you know, right? If you saw the Shazam movie, then you know that the Wizard talks to him about the champion before him, before Billy Batson, and so like there is also a direct connection to that that actually is well explained. So those are the three connective tissues. But as far as like all the characters that are introduced, there is a lack of connectivity there. I will say that I wish we could have gotten more of, but like, hey, maybe that cut exists. I don't know. If it does, I would say you might want to release that on DVD. Uh, Warner Brothers Discovery. I will say that. Um, so again, to wrap this up, I will say Black Adam. I'm gonna give it a solid 8 out of 10. Because again, the 2 points I'm striking away from it are just the things I didn't like about the film. Um, the articles are bogus. They don't really. The complaints aren't necessarily. They're not. They're very much not true. Some complaints I can see, I can get the comparisons, but like they're not. Uh, they're still empty complaints in in the overall scope of it because it doesn't break the film. Um, what the Rock is saying, I can see the mixed feelings why people are still on their toes. I really can. I'm not going to pretend like everything he's saying is on point. What I will say is the things that he is saying that do matter, though, are on point. I wish there was more clarity on, certain things, or not more clarity, but like, man, my guy, you might want to word things a bit differently. Think twice about what you're saying because some of it is kind of, I could see why it has people cringing a bit. Um, while you're saying all these great things, there are some things, very few things. I will say that. Let me word that. Very few things that you are saying that I just feel like, man, the Superman already exists in this universe. He's existed. The fact that you're bringing him back, can we say that you're bringing him back from where he was at, and we're gonna use this character, or maybe what you should be saying is I want to make sure that the character that this universe revolves around, which would be accurate because this is exactly what Zack Snyder intended, that I want to exist. I wanted Black Adam to exist in that universe, you know, um, because it made no sense to me for Black Adam to exist in a universe that Superman doesn't exist. So I want to make sure that my Black Adam is in this universe in which Superman is, because he is the character in which the entirety of the DC cinematic universe revolves around, as well as even the DC comics, right? So, which again, he was alluding to something like that, but he just, the way he says it is kind of like, oh my gosh, dude, I don't know, man. This is why people are iffy about what you're saying. I mean, I know, I feel like I know what he's trying to say, but it's like, I'm not everybody, and I know a lot of people that will take what he's saying and say, get all crazy about it. But um, so restore the Snyderverse. Is this a step in that direction? I would say this is more like a pivot. Um, because really the only character we see, or two characters for that matter, are just Amanda Waller and Henry Cavill Superman. But other than that, there are no direct ties to what we've had in the past. Not directly. This What they do in this film is very similar to Shazam, and this is why I say to a lot of people, it's almost like Shazam and Black Adam exist in a further down the road timeline. It's hard to kind of believe that though, because kind of like between the cop cars and Shazam, and we're like kind of like, are cops still using that kind of car? Uh yeah, it was just weird. I don't know. But then like in this, then you get to like this movie, and like there's like some very futuristic, high tech, but you can tell they exist in a universe or in a time where the Justice League is an established team, and that's where I kind of I don't want to say too much because then I feel like I am kind of spoiling it. But this is where I feel like when you're bringing in the Justice Society, you kind of have to like see, you really have to do a better job of explaining how they integrate in a world in which the Justice League clearly exists, because they clearly do exist in this universe. There are certain Easter eggs, so to speak, or things that are letting you know these characters do exist in this universe for sure, and they exist in a moment in time where they're prominent superheroes that are now being exploited by companies with where they have posters of them and toys and things of that nature. Similar to Shazam, where you got like you saw the Aquaman gear. The kid has a bullet that's supposed. You know what I'm saying? The batarang, Batfleck's batarang. So again, there's things that are letting you know that this the Black Adam does exist in that universe, and that the Justice League is clearly a part of that universe. They just obviously don't go deep. They don't deeply dive into explaining how and why and where have you been, and but not Black Adam, more so like Justice Society, and like it's not really fully explained. But it does exist technically in that universe. So that's why I'm saying it's more of a pivot, possibly more of a pivot than it is a step. And I say that because, again, as I said in the last video, we have to kind of just like, let's just be common sense, right? Like, we know for sure that the return of Henry Cavill in itself is something that the old regime had no intention of doing. Not even the people that you see credited in the film, not even they had the intentions of bringing Henry Cavill Superman back. Black Adam. The Rock has made that very clear that he had to go against and behind the old regime to the new team, the new people in charge to get that done. You know, him and his team. So that's like evidence in itself, along with the fact of what we know with Ben Affleck. And him playing Batman, Flash reshoots, Aquaman reshoots. So there's clearly nuggets letting us know that there's moves happening that are more than likely going to get the Snyderverse restored and are going to bring Zack back. Because the people that wanted Henry Cavill not to be a part of it, the people that didn't want Ben Affleck to be a part of it, the people that, you know, whatever. Those people, they're all gone. So anybody, the pretty much the gatekeepers that were keeping them away are now gone. Now means for sure more possibility. And I say possibility just because, like, well, we don't really know, right? But we do know, right? And what I mean by that is the signs are there. But it definitely lets you know that the door is definitely available for Zack Snyder to come back. And I don't see why they wouldn't do that. So in my opinion, if the question is the Restore the Snyderverse still a thing? For sure. Does that mean stop promoting it? Stop letting Warner Brothers know that you want that? Stop letting Warner Brothers know that we want Zack back? No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying for sure is that the moves that have been happening now leading to this film, with the things that are integrated in this film, are more probable chances that if we keep fighting for this, we will get it. If we keep letting the studio know this is what we want, we'll get it, because it looks like they're actually listening this time around. So we just have to keep our voices heard, our intentions known. We want Zack back. We want we want the air cut. We want Ben Affleck to do whatever he wants to do. I would love to see his movie. I don't know if that's what Ben Affleck has in mind. I really don't. And I think that's something we do have to consider. Like maybe Ben Affleck himself is moved on from that project, seeing that his film was technically hijacked, right? Um, and they went the Robert Pattinson way, so maybe he doesn't want to really do that film anymore. Maybe I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. But I would definitely like to see the Ben Affleck's boot movie if he's down to do it. I would love to see that. I want to see Deathstroke. I want to see that all play out. Um, so all that to say that it this movie lets you know that we can definitely say what we want, and more chances than not will actually be heard. Separate from what we knew the old regime to be, and that's that we could have said all we wanted, and they had no intentions of hearing us or giving us what we wanted. You know, um, we got, it was. I don't want to say we got lucky with the Snyder cut. It just things played out where it was convenient for them to be able to put that on HBO Max because they were trying to launch a new streaming platform in which they knew they were going to get a high volume of number of subscribers because Zack Snyder's Justice League was on there, you know. Um, so that in itself played in Zack's favor, and probably because maybe AT&T and you know just Keeler all thought like, well, this is what we're asking for. If we give them this, they'll stop. Little did they know, it's like, no, you just opened up another can of worms because how can you guys not want to do more with what we just saw, But anyways, that's a whole nother thing. So restart the Snyderverse is definitely still a possibility more than ever now before. That's how I see it. I definitely feel this is a pivot. I wouldn't say a step in that direction necessarily. Maybe if they would have done a better job of integrating things, I probably could have said confidently, oh yeah, this is definitely a step in that direction. Clear as day. It's definitely a pivot. But now, like, if what's being said as far as like source, certain sources, like from certain channels that are giving scoops, and if all that, which again, they've been batting at 100 or 1,000, average, maybe with some misses here and there, and even if, like, honestly, I can't think of any at the moment, but they've been hitting. So, like, if what they're saying is true, then really there isn't much to worry about. And it seems like it's going in a direction that's really going to work out for all of us, and I think we're all going to enjoy. And this movie, again, what I will say, demonstrates or shows that there is a pivot and an intention to go in a direction that they want to bring, you know, bring Black Adam into the realm of into the universe of Superman, which is Man of Steel. It is Batman versus Superman. It is Zack Snyder's Justice League. Let's stop talking about Justice League as if it matters anymore. That movie is trash. It's in the trash, and that's where it belongs, and that's where it's gonna stay. And I don't think, for sure, there's no. I know for a fact, David Zaslav, uh, and Mike DeLuca, none of those people that are being brought on board, none of them have the intentions of letting that see the light of day or having that be anything going forward. Um, so that's that. Um, and new DC, yes or no? I'm going to say yes to the company, like property management. Do I think that makes sense as like the overall, like, what people want to hear that's going to come out of movies? I don't. I personally, me personally, I do have a problem with how certain things are being said around that, because it's like, I'm not sure we need a new DC. I think I just want to be brought back to the glory days of DC, like Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman. You know, um, Wonder Woman, I guess, for that matter. Whether you hated it or loved it, or loved it, or you have issues with its connective issues, Aquaman really was still a glorious moment for DC. I mean, kind of speaks for itself, you know. But even apart from this cinematic universe, like Dark Knight trilogy in itself, like that era of DC, Joker, You know what I'm saying? Like things that actually hold true to what DC is. That's what I want to see going forward. Um, you know, films that are have its own mark, but at the same time have a framework or foundation that is DC. You know, uh, when you watch the Dark Knight trilogy, right, and after we were done with that era, when it moved into Man of Steel, you saw like, yes, this is still that DC, but in a new universe with Superman being at the forefront and everything surrounding around him, you know, um, and that's what we want. So like I could see why this hashtag new DC sets people off a bit because it's like I'm not so sure that's what we need as far as like it's not necessarily new DC in that like we don't need a new DC. We need to go back to the old DC that actually had something to offer. Um, you know, and kind of rid ourselves of like weird Frankenstein projects like Justice League or I'm not so sure how some people like this the Birds of Prey film, but Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 1984, uh, you know, even the Suicide Squad. You know, I'm gonna say it. It's films that just did a disservice to the greater films of DC. Um, I'll say that. So um, even the Batman, I'm gonna say it. Like it had potential, but like nah, even the Batman, because that's not Batman. That wasn't Batman. If you know anything about Batman, that wasn't Batman. That wasn't even Bruce Wayne. It was a weird, its own version of it. Um, you know, and they definitely missed the mark. I think they thought it was gonna hit like Joker or something. They thought but see, the thing is with Joker, the thing about the Joker movie is that even though it was like its own origin story, it still was true to the character. Like you can still identify who Joker is in that character because of who he is in the comics, or who I'm saying. There was still a connectivity, a connective tissue to source material of what we know Joker to be. So it didn't stray away from the character of Joker, even though it was a brand new, not brand new, but a new origin story to Joker. You know, so I thought they could do that, but like you no, you misunderstood the Joker movie. Then it had its own nuance to it, but the character itself, Joker, Arthur Fleck, who he was, things that he did was still true to the Joker character, and that's why you could still appreciate that film. This is the Batman movie. It was like this isn't Batman in any way, shape, or form. Um, and more so because you're not landing it correctly with Bruce Wayne, you know. But anyways, let me not get too far fetched with that. All that to say, hashtag new DC. If what it means is new management, uh, new leadership, then yeah, I'm with that all day. Or if it's like, or maybe if it's just insinuating that there's going to be new characters now added, sure. But like, please do a good job of integrating it into this universe that we all love already, you know, and that's that, you know, the Snyderverse. Like, I'm not going to word it any other way. The Snyderverse, which allowed for directors like David Ayer to bring Suicide Squad, and I hope we can one day see his true vision for it. It allowed directors like Patty Jenkins to do her thing with Wonder Woman, the first Wonder Woman. I don't know what the hell she was thinking with 1984. It allowed James Wan to do his thing with Aquaman. Um, it allowed Sandberg to do his thing with Shazam. Again, films that whether you hate them or love them, regardless, these directors were able to do what they did. You know, um, unfortunately, under the oppression of the old regime. So it'll be nice to see, like, again, if you're saying new DC because it's like, no, we're going to bring in directors that are going to be able to build confidently on the foundation of already what was set with Zach's work, then sure, I'm for that new DC. And this movie, I feel gives it that it shows that there's an opportunity for that to actually be able to be the case. I won't say that it solidifies that 100%, but it gives it opens a door of possibility to that being the case. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Again, I only watched it once. I think I might try and go watch it again, just to get like a second viewing of it, and maybe there's other things I missed. But overall, the movie was good. I encourage you guys to go see it. And yeah, that's it. That's it. That being said, peace out. Have a good night. And well, see you next time.